Hi, everyone. Welcome to Happy to See Me. I'm Erika Casupanan. Okay, so I promised I would share something that's going on in my life or something that I was happy to see at the beginning of each episode. And honestly, I have a lot going on and I have a lot of personal and professional things coming up that I'm excited about. But I record these episodes weeks in advance. So I was thinking about, what do I share that would not seem super old? And I feel like people would watch it and think, girl, that ended weeks ago. What are you talking about? But here's what I'm going to share. This week, I did more work with this not-for-profit that I adore called New Circles. It's this not-for-profit in Toronto. They provide employment skills training and support for newcomers to Canada. And one of the services they provide is this clothing bank. So people provide clothing donations or companies provide clothing donations, and then newcomers and equity-deserving individuals can come and actually shop for their families for free and get the clothing that they need for their families. And as somebody who came to Canada as an immigrant when I was a baby, my family moved from the Philippines when I was quite young. We relied a lot on secondhand clothing, and shopping from thrift stores and learning to be resourceful like that really did help me to develop my personal style and helped me to make creative choices when it came to my fashion. Because I thought, okay, if this is the sandbox I'm given, then I'm going to figure out how to make this work best for me and express myself. An amazing story that I heard when I went to work with the not-for-profit this week. One of the services that they offer is they give suits to people who are going for job interviews. In particular, for men's suits, they actually have a stylist who comes in once a week, and men can come in and make appointments and they can get styled for suits that they need for upcoming job interviews. And recently, they told me a story about this man who came in, did the suit styling appointment, got his suit, and then he did a job interview and ended up getting a job that was in his field of study, which for many immigrants, it's hard to actually work in the field that you were trained in once you move to a new country. So he got a job in his field of study and he actually got a really good salary. And I just think it's incredible how something that could be seen as small as a suit could make a difference in someone's confidence, and it could make a difference that became really tangible for him and his family. So if you're in Toronto and you have clothes that you need to donate, consider dropping them off at New Circles. You can find them on social media, New Circles Toronto. And if you're not from Toronto, just have a look around and see what's available in your community, because I'm sure there's so many of these types of organizations all over the place. If you want to donate your clothes, it could be a way for you to donate them and for you to know that they're going directly to families who are in your community who could use these clothes to become more confident and to settle in the community in a really dignified way. That really warmed my heart. I'm hoping to do more work with them. Hopefully you'll see me working with them when it comes to prom. But that was something that I was happy to see this week. Anyways, this episode, I am so happy about this episode too. I am speaking to Makayla Couture. If you're not familiar with Makayla Couture, she is a drag artist from Toronto. Most people were first introduced to her on season 2 of Canada's Drag Race. She was actually one of the makeovers who came in. She was paired with Isis Couture, and she had this really powerful moment with Isis, who eventually became the winner of that season and eventually became Makayla's drag mother. And we talk about this moment in the episode. After that, Makayla went on and she did reality TV herself. She was on the show Call Me Mother as a contestant. So we talk about reality TV, and we also talk about Makayla as a representative of the Black trans community. And I want to thank Makayla because she was so generous with me in terms of talking about her journey to coming out as a trans person. I think that it's going to be really touching to a lot of people. She gave me good advice in terms of being an ally to people in the trans community, and she shared advice for people who are questioning their own gender identity. I hope that you enjoy this conversation. I was so inspired listening to her. She is a star, and I'm lucky that I got her on the podcast when I did. So let's get into it. This is Makayla Couture. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, everyone. I have the pleasure of being here with the amazing Makayla Couture. Hi, Makayla.
Hi, how are you doing, Erika?
I'm amazing. It's so amazing to see your face. If anyone is listening to the audio-only recording, just know Makayla looks stunning.
Stop. I'm literally in a bathrobe, so thank you.
You are not. That is not a bathrobe.
I'm so serious. This is a bathrobe.
Oh okay, she got up. She showed us it's a bathrobe. I feel like I've been put to shame. I look awful in a bathrobe. I look like a wet donkey or something. So this is how gorgeous you are if you have pulled off this bathrobe.
Oh my God, thank you. I'm making that a checklist. Like, can pull off bathrobes.
Well, this is the thing. I feel like you have already accomplished so much. And I have to ask off the bat, how old are you?
I am 20 years old.
You're 20. Okay. So you're just a fresh little bebe. Yet you have done so much. Can you let everybody know just a little bit about who you are in case people don't know already? And trust me, they will all be fans of you by the end of this.
My name is Makayla Couture. Out of drag, my name is Makayla Walker. I'm a Black trans woman. I grew up in a Jamaican Christian household. I grew up here in Toronto in a little area called Jane and Finch, and grew up to be like this really dynamic drag queen, superstar, pop star kind of thing. And just got so many incredible experiences that have led me to be where I am right now.
I feel like you share who you are so confidently, and I feel like you still haven't even hit all of the things. There are so many things for you to talk about. Makayla is from, in my opinion, one of the most memorable episodes of Canada's Drag Race, and I know we'll talk about that. And she was recently a finalist in Call Me Mother. And if you're not familiar with Call Me Mother, I would say it's like Drag Race meets The Voice, in that you join this drag family and you are mentored by these iconic drag queens. And you're in this competition, but you made it to the very end. And you have accomplished all of this at such a young age. So congratulations. I also want to tell you, Makayla, I have friends' moms who listen to this podcast. So I feel like you might have to help me out in explaining what some of this stuff is to them, if you don't mind, being the translator for friends' moms. Shout out to friends' moms. Can you start by explaining what a drag family is and how being in drag families have impacted your career so far?
Well, a drag family is like any other family. It's your chosen family. And when you go through the pinnacle of what everyone is, it's like you have your drag mother who kind of just like oversees all her little babies and makes sure that like, you know, they're representing the name as it should be. So obviously I'm part of the House of Couture. And the one thing that I wholeheartedly make sure that I'm always doing is that no matter what place I go into, no matter what person I meet, I treat them all equally and I treat them all fairly. And it's not only because I'm representing myself, but I'm also representing every other couture that might step into the building later. And that's something that Isis, my drag mother, makes sure that is like embedded in me and something that I've always had in me that I've wanted to share with people, as well as someone who's always there for you. Not just in drag, but also within your daily life. It literally, a drag family literally is like having just like another person who, doesn't have to be blood, but is always there for you and shows up for you in the best way possible.
And I think that you have hit the jackpot in terms of having just the most iconic, amazing drag mothers. You have what it looks like to me, such an incredible drag family. And that moment on Canada's Drag Race, it's always going to stick with me. It was the moment when you came in as the makeover. So you weren't even a queen who was featured the full season. You came in for one episode and you made this impact because you were paired with Isis Couture, who went on to become the winner of the season. And the moment that I think so many viewers will never forget is when Isis looked you in the eyes and told you that you will never be alone again. And I believed it watching her. And I feel like looking at your face in that moment, it looked like you believed her too. So what happened with your relationship with Isis after the show?
Oh my God. Well, after we finished filming, well, actually before that, before we finished filming, maybe midway through, because it was 2 days of filming, on the first day, I got home and I was like, okay, I need to know exactly who this person is. So I like researched them and like stalked them on Instagram and everything. And then by the time they were done filming, she messaged me and she was like, it was such an honor to meet you. You're like a superstar, you're everything, da, da, da. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cute. And then from that moment, it was just like checking in on one another whenever we can, and just making sure that we were okay. And when the season was airing for her, I'd always be like, I'm rooting for you, like, you're going to do amazing. even if she was in the bottom, I was like, hey, you were robbed, like fully. And like over time, our relationship continued to just grow and grow, and we realized how much alike we were. And over time, while we already were a drag family by that point, it kind of solidified, like, yeah, I want you to represent my house.
Wow, that must be such an honor. And I think it speaks to the raw talent that you have because, again, at 20, you're 20 now. At that point, you were a teenager. Yet so many people, I think, saw this spark and this fire in you. And then, of course, you work so hard. So you've been able to really take it to the next level. And I truly think you're just getting started. So I want to ask about the younger Makayla. Were you always a performer? Was getting into drag and being on stage something that you always wanted to do?
Oh, absolutely. When I was younger, I would actually memorize the lines of all the actors in like my favorite show or my favorite movie. And I would like, my mom would always yell at me for like talking over the show. So I would basically be lip syncing my favorite shows and movies anytime we watched them. So I knew that like I always wanted to become an actress or a dancer, something in the performance field. And once I got into high school, I went to Earl High Secondary School, which has a performing arts program. And I was a theater major for 4 years, and a dance minor, I guess you could say, for the same amount of time. So I, over time, would kind of like got all these little practices that like helped build me become a drag performer. And I think it was by the time I was in like grade 10, I was kind of just
Wow.
like, yeah, I was like doing pride shows at our school as I went by the name Mimi Monet, which awful name, never ever doing that again. That kind of was like the baby steps of creating Makayla Couture.
Wow. Okay. So in grade 10, you were already performing at pride shows.
Yeah,
Were you quite young when you were starting to explore your identity as a queer person?
absolutely. I feel like I started exploring my queer identity when I was in elementary school. So when I was in like JK, um, junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten, around that time, because I knew I was different, but I couldn't necessarily put a finger on what it was. And I didn't have the vocabulary until maybe like grade three, going up while I was incredibly young. And it probably wasn't the best thing my mom could do. We watched Degrassi a lot growing up. So I seen queer folks through that lens. And I also got to see trans people through a not so great lens through watching shows like Maury, Jerry Springer. And so I never aligned with being trans because of how it was being represented, but I always kind of aligned myself with being gay or queer because of the representation that Degrassi had at that time, being the early 2000s when it probably wasn't the best time for queer people. While things were getting better, it wasn't the greatest. So yeah, I was kind of, figuring things out from there. And as I got older, I kind of kept it on the hush hush and tried to figure things out on my own.
I really appreciate you bringing up watching Degrassi and watching Maury because I'm always really interested in how pop culture affects the way that we think of ourselves and the way that we think of each other. And as you said, you didn't really have the words to describe what you were feeling and how to properly put your finger on the identity that best suited you. And I think it's so important now that we see someone like you who's on screen that can be an amazing role model for kids like you or today. When it came to your trans identity, was there anything that you watched or was there anything that you experienced that helped you have that eureka moment or kind of realize that that is the way that you felt best describing yourself?
It happened twice. So when I was in high school, I actually came out as trans when I was in my 12th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first day of school. I'll never forget. I had like really long braids touching like my kneecaps and like was in a mini skirt and like this cool Tupac t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my teacher calling out the name, my dead name. And I said here, and she was like, oh, I thought that was a boy's name. And at that time, I was like, yeah, it is. I identify as male. I didn't really on the inside, but it was, she apologized and everything. But for me, it was like, you just recognize the fact that on the inside, I don't feel this way. And that even when you called that name out, it didn't feel correct for me. And so
Yeah.
from that moment, I started to look into, what it meant to be trans and, what other names would fit for me and all that. And I was going through it and I was socially transitioning over time because
Hmm.
that teacher made me really realize that like, there is something that might not fully be there. But at that time, I wasn't mentally prepared to transition. I didn't have the home based protection to come out as trans. So I was trans to everyone in my school, but I would go home and it would be a totally different person. And with that, it kind of felt like drag in a sense, where it's like I'm one person and I come out and I'm a totally other person. And I think that that kind of like stopped me from wanting to continue. And so I did kind of like tell everyone, like, hey, everyone, I'm no longer trans. I'm just going to go by he, him pronouns and this is my name, da 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 da. And I did that for maybe a year. And I found my past ballroom family. So I was in the ballroom world and I was a part of the House of Vuitton. And there were so many beautiful trans people in that house that like reignited that feeling. And by that time, I was already living on my own. So I didn't have to worry about going home and being a totally different person. I could be the one true person I wanted to be all day long. And so, with the support of my trans sister Jasmine Mugler and my drag mother who does realness, Tamar Mugler, they kind of helped me, become the person I am today, which is Michaela Walker.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. I could just imagine you as the high school student having that moment with your teacher. And then it's sad to hear about how you felt like you didn't have the right support at home to come out in that moment. And I think that this is also what makes having the drag family and having that chosen support system so special, because you were able to find that strength to really live as yourself through this family that you're not related to by blood or anything, but just through the love and the wanting you to have that better experience. It's so touching. I'm so happy
Absolutely.
that you found that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I always tell people that like you really have to be in the right space to come out or transition. You have to have the right people, you have to have the right environment, and you have to have the right friends to do that. And it's bad that it's kind of like this little thing that you have to like prep for, but coming out and being trans is there's a lot of safety issues that come with it. And not every household is going to be the same. So until you feel that you're 100% comfortable and you can say it to yourself, you won't be able to say it to other people.
Do you feel like the family that you had at home and the relationship with your biological family, has that improved over time? Have they come to accept you?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
My older brother, on the other hand, isn't as accepting, and we don't necessarily talk that much, but that was a relationship I was okay sacrificing for my own happiness. And the same goes for my biological father. We do not have the relationship that I would love to have, but it's another relationship that I was okay sacrificing to know that my heart will be okay. I think that it's important that you have to kind of put yourself first as you grow up, and realize that there are things that people are going to say to you, whether they're family or not. There are things that they're going to do or say that you have to be like, you know what, that's not okay. And I'm going to choose to separate myself from this situation. And until you are able to love me the way I believe that I should be loved, I'm going to step away.
Thank you for sharing all of that, truly. I know that through seeing you on TV and through hearing some of your interviews, I know that you had gone through these challenges in your life. And at the same time, I think that you now having the spotlight on you, having been on TV a few times, being this performer and being as young as you are and as confident as you are as a trans woman, I feel choked up because I feel like having someone like you out there is going to save somebody's life, truly. And having you openly talk about it on a platform like mine, thank you. Thank you for your generosity in sharing all of that.
Thank you. That means so much to me.
And I've seen some of the things that you've been doing since you've been on TV. I've seen some of the work you've done with It Gets Better. I've seen interviews with you. I know that you have so much more coming up. How does it feel for you now that you are the representation for trans youth in media now?
It's huge. It's huge for me because I remember when I was younger and I told myself that I wouldn't come out until I had the stereotypical white picket fence family and my life was practically over. And to think now that like I am 20 years old, being a representative for the Black community, the trans community, I'm performing everywhere. I get to talk to elderly and seniors and younger children like every day. It really does mean a lot to me, and goes to show that like things can change and things can get better, and you can be in a rocky place one day and find yourself in a completely different place the next.
Completely. And I think that part of why people are attracted to you so much, and I think that part of why you have this draw, one, it's because I feel like you have so much heart. I feel like you're not afraid to be vulnerable and share exactly what you're feeling. And I feel like in some ways you're willing to have your heart on your sleeve, not in a way where you can be taken advantage of, but in a way where you just say to the world, here I am. And then on the flip side, or rather, I think on the same side, you are also this incredible, charismatic performer. You command the stage. I remember seeing you in person in Toronto, and I just couldn't believe that you were 19 at the time. And I think that you're so young. I think you're truly just a force to be reckoned with, and you're just getting started. So what do you have planned in terms of your career as a performer and as a drag artist?
I have a lot of things that I want to do. I kind of have set up a kind of like a 5 year, 10 year plan for myself. And while I love what I do right now, I think that eventually I want to change things up and start looking into producing, and not necessarily being the performer, but getting other performers to be spotlighted and do the things that I'm doing right now. So I feel like, while I've gotten to do some TV stuff, and that's why I get to go to all these different places and talk to all these different people. I think that there's other stories that need to be told, of people who haven't been on TV. And so I want to bring, queer people and other drag performers to schools to talk to students who, again, haven't been on TV but have compelling stories that other people can relate to. I think that a lot of stories have, gone unseen because they're not TV worthy. And I don't think that anyone's necessarily TV worthy. I think that there's so many beautiful testimonies that can come out of any queer people, any queer person's mouth, because we've all lived very different lives, but they all intersect in a very interesting and beautiful way.
Yeah, I feel like what's deemed quote unquote TV worthy is determined by whoever is in charge of what gets to be on TV or what gets to be on screen. And I think the reality is it's not the queer community or the trans community that gets to make those decisions now. So it's very inspiring to hear that you want to get into production and you want to do more to create opportunities for people to have their stories told on a bigger platform. Is there a story in particular that you want to tell and that you want to get more eyes on?
That's a big one. There's a few performers that I've met. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can even tell their story now, because obviously I would love for them to get their consent about that first. But there are a few performers that I know that have been through things that I am like, I could never imagine, the things that you have gone through. And just like hearing them talk and hearing, their story on, throughout their lives, what they've gone through. It's just so touching and so beautiful. And those are the things that I want to bring to the forefront. Like I want to talk about queer disabled people. I want to talk more about queer people of color, I come from a Black Christian household, and that's going to be totally different from someone who is raised in like a Jewish white household or a Catholic white household. Those stories are all going to be totally different. And so I really want to be able to share as many queer stories as possible because we're all so deserving.
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt that you'll be able to do it for sure. And I think that even you being able to be on screen and having had the opportunities you've already had by virtue of you being yourself, I feel like you've already started making that mission happen. And I think it's only going to get better. I do want to ask you about your time on reality TV because you and I have both done reality TV. And when you started as, the guest on the makeover episode of Canada's Drag Race, and then you end up as a contestant on your own on Call Me Mother, what was that transition like? Was being on Call Me Mother what you expected it to be?
Not at all. And not in the best way. Um, yeah, not in the best way.
Wow.
I've always wanted to do reality TV. I've always wanted to do TV, period. Like, I love scripted shows. I love doing movies. I love reality TV. I love it all. Like, put a camera up there, I'm there. But getting to do Call Me Mother was very interesting because I think it's such a fresh show. It's so new that I don't think they at that time had yet thought of what they wanted,
Hmm.
like who they wanted to cast, and what kind of person they see as a winner, and like what does it take to become that winner. Those things hadn't necessarily been clued in. And as someone who loves watching competitive TV, it was very like I just being there. It felt like they kind of brought me on to kind of just like have the punching bag. And it didn't
Oh.
always feel the greatest. And it got to a point where after the show, after filming, I did know in that moment that I wasn't going to win. And I had become okay with that. But I then had to do a bunch of work in rebuilding my confidence in myself and my self love and recognizing that like I, as an artist, am capable and incredible. And yeah, I just wish I didn't have to go through that experience to realize how amazing of an artist I am. But nonetheless, I did, and it did teach me at the end of the day that I am like beyond incredible and that my art deserves to be seen by everyone.
Oh, okay. I'm glad that you came out feeling stronger. And I can totally empathize with how you can go on reality TV and give it your best. And then it can really challenge your view of yourself. It can really challenge your confidence, even though you brought your best to the table. It's hard having a version of you that you had no control over broadcast. It's hard when you're in this situation, and since it's such a fresh show, you don't quite know exactly what they're going to throw at you. They don't even know what they're going to throw at you. So it's a tricky one, and congratulations for getting through it, truly. I was once talking to somebody who was from Toronto. They were recently on Canada's Drag Race, and they had a hard time once they got into that situation, even though prior to Canada's Drag Race, they were amazing and successful and all of that stuff. The way that I feel about it is I think that it's almost like if you have a tropical plant and then you put it into a different setting, like the desert. Is it the
Yeah.
plant's fault that it's not blossoming, or is it just you put the plant in the wrong place? And I think that that could potentially have been what happened with you.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I 100% agree with that. It's all about the environment. And I think that the Call Me Mother environment just was not for me. I've been on the Canada's Drag Race set, and that was such a lovely experience. And especially getting to talk to and now know all the amazing producers who run that show. They were amazing and lovely. And that's not to say that not everyone on set for Call Me Mother wasn't amazing. There were just some forces that worked against me, and that's unfortunate.
So after you finished filming Call Me Mother and before it started airing, Were you able to get advice from your drag mom, Isis Couture, on how to handle watching yourself on TV? And if you don't mind sharing, what was it?
Definitely. So both me and Isis actually were filming at the same time. So she was filming Canada versus the World, and I was filming Call Me Mother, and we got back on the same day.
No
So we
way.
had I'm so serious. We had a show maybe like a month after, and we finally got to see each other. And one of the things that she told me was that I have to remember who I am. And this also played into the, re self love and the rebuilding of my confidence. Knowing exactly who you are, because the storyteller is going to tell the story that they feel best fits you, whereas you know your own story and you don't have the power to change how they're gonna, view you throughout the show. So remembering who you are and remembering how important you are and keeping the friends and family that mean the most to you as close as possible to you is going to be the best way to keep yourself in the best mindset while watching the show back.
I think that that's amazing advice. Yeah, like I said before, you can easily lose yourself in all of this. I remember when I came off of Survivor and before the show aired, I had been announced as a cast member already, so it had been public. And I talked to somebody who had been on Survivor years before, and she said to me, write down everything you remember. Write down what the beach looked like, write down every conversation you remember, write it all down because once the show starts airing, it's going to warp your memory and you're going to think, oh,
Yeah.
did that not happen the way I thought it did? And she said, keep this journal because that's the truth for you. So that's advice for
Yeah,
anybody who's going to be on reality TV.
definitely. Even, well, I'm sure during your filming you probably weren't able to have a journal, but I got to have a journal while I was filming and I have everything noted. And it was so interesting watching the show back and going, that is not true, but okay.
I think that's the other funny thing. There were definitely moments where I watched myself and I thought, it's showing me talk about one person, but I know when I was saying that, I was talking about somebody else. So I think that's the other thing. It's not real. And I think once you have that point of view, you realize, okay, it was just like a thing. I was on it. I don't know if it was really me, but there it was. It happened.
Yeah.
So speaking of advice, since you are just this amazing, incredible young person with so much confidence, and you have gone through your trans journey, and I know you're still on it, but for anybody who is in high school or younger right now, what's advice that you have for them?
Don't come out until you are comfortable within yourself to be outwardly trans and that you know that the environment that you are in is going to be safe enough to be trans. As well as just like, don't rush into things. Like, take time. I didn't start taking hormones until this year, well, late last year rather. And that's because I knew that I wasn't in the mental space to go on to something that's going to start changing how I think and how my body developed and everything. So take your time with everything that you need. Like, you don't have to rush into things. You don't have to look like, you don't have to look like I don't know, the biggest trans superstar out there. Like, you can take your time and, love yourself, love the person who's in the mirror. And then you can start taking those little changes that are like, that you really do feel that you need.
Okay, and I want to ask a follow-up question to that. For anybody who is the family member or a friend of somebody who is currently questioning their gender identity or they're transitioning or they've come out as trans, what advice do you have for the loved ones so they can be good allies?
Ask questions. I don't think people say this enough, but ask questions because everyone's going to be different, and whether they're trans, gay, bisexual, etc., 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 everyone's story is going to be totally different, and how they process things are going to be totally different. So if you ask questions and try to figure out that individual themselves, you can learn so much more about the entire community as well. My mom loves to do some like internet googling as well. She'll be like, "Oh, I heard that when you get on hormones, like this happens to your body. Like, has this happened yet?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, mom, it did." And like little things like that, like asking questions and also doing your own research, like that really does kind of just help understand the individual that you are taking care of or just showing love to.
I love that advice because I feel like nobody's really expecting anybody to have all the answers. I think that we all should have enough grace for each other to know that we can't handle it perfectly. But as long as there's that real curiosity and that real care, it can go a long way.
Definitely.
I want to ask you about something that I saw on your feed that just made me so happy. I saw you recently posted on Instagram about this trip to Jamaica. Can you tell me about that?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. So as I said, I am Jamaican. Well, I was born here, but my father was born in Jamaica and my mother's parents are from Jamaica. So I have a lot of Jamaican blood running through me. And one thing that I've always wanted to do was, go back home and see what it's like there. But because my family was so poor when I was younger, we couldn't make trips down there. And so it was always kind of like this thing that was in the back of my head, like one day. And then, I started realizing how queer I was and how much of a stunning trans woman I was becoming. And I realized that going to Jamaica probably wouldn't be something that would be possible because Jamaica is known for being a very transphobic and homophobic island. And so over time, I talked with my boyfriend, I talked with my mom, and I was trying to like figure out ways of like, how would this be possible? And so I thought it wouldn't be best until I felt the most comfortable within myself to go there because I didn't want to be all frantic. And then if something happens, like something happens at the border where they're questioning my appearance to my, you know, passport, how would I react? And so, yeah, we waited until I was fully comfortable within myself to do such a big thing. And I got to go with someone who I loved so dearly and knew that would, protect me at all costs. And I went on this amazing, beautiful trip that honestly kind of changed my life.
What changed?
My realization changed of the world and how people perceive other people. One of the things that I was so fearful of was someone going, "Oh, like this person's trans, they don't belong," da 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 da, and that was something that was crept up in the back of my mind that I kind of suppressed, but it was always still there, and I ended up meeting a lot of different trans and queer people there, like on the island. And it made me feel so much more comfortable because it was like, you are just like me. And you're going through something that I'm also going through. And we're both in this one place where we thought we wouldn't be as safe. But we are, we're fine. We're doing it. Like so many people kept telling me, like, it's not a safe place to go, da da da. But with the help of all these other beautiful trans and queer bodies, I felt so comfortable and felt so accepted and loved.
I feel like that was so clear in the photos. The photos that I saw on Instagram, and if you haven't seen them already, go to Makayla's Instagram and check them out because it just seemed like triumphant. I could only imagine the grade 12 Makayla, if you could go back and tell her, this is what you're going to be doing when you're 20, she probably would have never believed it. All right, so before we wrap, I want to just ask you some rapid fire questions. You can answer them as quickly as you want, or you could give any description or anything like that. So we'll just do a couple quick ones. So you are a member of the House of Couture. If you could be an ambassador for any luxury fashion house, which one would it be?
Oh, definitely, without a doubt, it'd be Mugler.
Ooh, oh yes, you would look amazing. I know that you have had iconic drag moms, but if you could pick anyone to be your drag daddy, who would it be? And it can be anybody for any reason.
Oh, this is a hard one. My drag daddy, this is really hard. If I could have a drag daddy, it would probably be like, if they're a drag performer here in Toronto, their name is Manny Dingo. They probably would be my drag daddy. Like, honestly, the best performer I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, and then speaking of your fantasy drag family, if you could adopt anybody in the world to be your drag child, who would it be?
Megan Thee Stallion.
Amazing. I totally see it.
Right?
The power. that house would have. Okay, last one. This podcast is called Happy to See Me. We're at the beginning of 2023. So what is something you'd be happy to see in 2023?
I would probably want to see more change in the drag community with allowing cis and trans performers being like the forefront of drag community.
There you go. And hey, with you out there in the drag community, I feel like you are leading the charge to make it happen. And I feel like there are so many amazing trans and cis women performers who are right there with you. I definitely see it happening this year.
Period.
Makayla, thank you for chatting with me today. Where can people find you? What are you doing next? Tell me about all of the things.
Thank you so much for having me. You can find me at Makayla.Couture on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And of course, you can always look in my stories to find out where I'm performing next.
I find you to be so inspirational, and it's insane to me that you're only 20, because I honestly think one day I'm going to reach the point where I say, wow, I'm glad that I got Makayla on the podcast when I did, because now she is off doing whatever. And I feel like I'll be able to watch you and think I'm so lucky I met her when I did. So thank you so much, Makayla. I will see you soon.